The place was a small village in the English countryside. It was a cold evening in December 1895, and snow was falling gently. Inside a cozy little cottage, four sisters sat by the fireplace. Their names were Charlotte, Lucy, Emma, and Rose Winters. Charlotte, the eldest, was 17 years old. She had long brown hair and soft blue eyes. Lucy, 16, was tall and strong, with golden hair and bright green eyes. Emma, 14, was the quiet one, always lost in a book, with dark brown hair and thoughtful eyes. Rose, the youngest, was only 12. She had fiery red hair and a mischievous smile. Their mother, Mrs. Winters, was out visiting a neighbor who had fallen ill, and their father, Mr. Winters, was far away. He was a sailor, traveling across the seas on a merchant ship, and they hadn't seen him for many months. The sisters were busy knitting scarves and socks for the poor children in the village. They worked in silence for a while, the only sound coming from the crackling of the fire. "We are not rich, but we are not poor either," said Charlotte, breaking the silence. She looked up from her knitting and smiled softly. "We have enough, and we have each other. But it would be nice to have some of the lovely things other girls have," said Lucy, sighing. "I would love a beautiful silk dress or a pair of fine leather shoes." Rose frowned. "I don't care about dresses or shoes," she said. "I want an adventure. I wish I could sail away like Father, see new places and meet exciting people." Emma, who had been quiet until now, put down her book and spoke. "We may not have fancy things or adventures, but we are lucky. We have a warm home, and we are safe. That's more than some people have." The girls nodded in agreement, and for a moment, they sat in comfortable silence. But the peace was soon interrupted by the sound of the front door opening. Mrs. Winters entered, brushing the snow from her coat. Her cheeks were red from the cold, but she had a warm smile on her face. "Hello, my dears," she said as she hung her coat by the door. "How have you been today?" "Good, Mother," the girls replied in unison. "We've been knitting for the children at the orphanage," added Charlotte. Mrs. Winters beamed with pride. "I'm so proud of you girls. It's important to think of others, especially during this time of year." Lucy jumped up from her seat. "Come, Mother, sit by the fire. Supper is nearly ready," she said as she rushed to the kitchen to finish preparing the meal. After they had eaten, Mrs. Winters sat by the fire with her daughters. "I have something special for you girls," she said, her eyes twinkling. The girls exchanged excited glances. "Is it a letter from Father?" asked Rose eagerly. Mrs. Winters smiled and nodded. "Yes, it is. Your father has sent a letter all the way from the other side of the world. He writes that he misses you all very much and has a Christmas message for each of you." The sisters gathered around as Mrs. Winters began to read the letter aloud. As she read, their father's words filled the room with warmth and love. He spoke of the adventures he had been on, the new people he had met, and the things he had seen. But more than anything, he wrote about how much he missed his family and how he looked forward to returning home soon. The letter ended with a special message for each of the girls. For Charlotte, he wrote about how proud he was of her for taking care of her sisters while he was away. For Lucy, he wrote about her strength and how he knew she would grow into a fine, brave woman. For Emma, he wrote about her love of books and how he hoped she would never stop learning. And for Rose, he wrote about her adventurous spirit and how he hoped she would one day find the adventure she longed for. By the time Mrs. Winters finished reading, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. The girls hugged their mother tightly, feeling the warmth of their father's love even from so far away. Chapter 2. A Christmas Miracle. A few days later, it was Christmas Eve. The village was covered in snow, and the air was filled with the scent of pine and baked goods. The Winters sisters were busy preparing for Christmas. They had spent the morning decorating the cottage with holly and mistletoe, and now they were baking gingerbread cookies to share with their neighbors. As the evening approached, they sat by the fire, listening to the soft sounds of Christmas carols drifting through the air from the village church. Mrs. Winters was in the kitchen, preparing a special Christmas Eve supper. The girls were excited, but they couldn't help but feel a little sad, knowing their father wouldn't be with them for Christmas. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Charlotte jumped up to answer it, wondering who could be visiting so late. When she opened the door, she gasped in surprise. Standing there, covered in snow and holding a large bag, was their father. "Father," she cried, her eyes wide with joy. The other girls rushed to the door, and soon they were all hugging their father, unable to believe he was really there. Mr. Winters laughed and hugged them all tightly. "I told you I would come home for Christmas," he said with a grin. Mrs. Winters appeared in the doorway, her eyes filled with tears of happiness. "Oh, Henry, you made it," she said, rushing to embrace her husband. The family spent the rest of the evening by the fire, sharing stories, eating their Christmas supper, and opening small gifts. Mr. Winters had brought each of the girls a little trinket from his travels, and they couldn't have been happier. As the snow continued to fall outside, the Winters family sat together, knowing that this was the best Christmas gift they could have ever received: being together. Subscribe for more videos. Your support helps me create more content. Thanks for watching.